Good morning, dear friends of Unity. Thank you for being here. I prepared a presentation which I'm entitling Repurposing Your Purpose. I have about 550 words here, and I've already used up about 20. So let's see how it goes. I invite you to have a pencil and paper ready during the presentation. If you think that's appropriate, if you think you're going to want something to write on. I see Neil has it happening over there. Thank you, brother Neil. Frank's got to have, oh my goodness. I can see a whole bunch of A's that are going to come out of this presentation. Good, you're all grade A material anyway in my book. Well, here are some questions to prime our imaginations about repurposing our purpose. So just contemplate for a moment here. What we'll have here is a series of questions. We're going to prepare for a contemplation exercise. So what is your purpose? Whatever purpose means to you personally, what is that in your life? What's the purpose for being here today? What is the purpose of your vocation? This statement is going to be similar to a mission statement for a business, but this business is you incorporated, So you are in a corpus. So what do we do with this thing? We have to have a direction, a purpose. Most of us as adults, we have had plenty of time to change, revise, and go back to a beginning. That's very normal in these times. So toward the end of forming this purpose statement or this mission statement, what is the most important use of your energy? Maybe you're going to be jotting down some words while I'm giving you these questions. What is your goal? Is it sufficiently broad or is it very focused, depending on your temperament? That means a lot. Some of us are very detail oriented. We like to have every step listed. And that's a good thing too. Some of us are more abstract. Some of us like to skirt around issues and plow through them. For many people, the goals we have and the purposes we state might be the same. What are the components of our thinking when we form our goals or when we realize our purpose in this life? Do we want to resolve past karma, serve humanity, achieve independence? That could be either financial or physical independence or emotional independence, like processing fear. That's a big one. We live with a lot of fear in these times, but it does not have to get a grip. So maybe that is a goal. Or maybe you want to achieve the top status in your career field or start a new career. Or maybe write a publishable piece of work. A couple of you here are avid writers. I know about that. Don't stop, keep writing. Or maybe you want to establish a regular spiritual practice or heal a relationship, friendship. Relationships are all important. We have relationships surrounding us all the time. And looking into the promises of your birth faith. Some of us came to the Unity movement from another faith tradition, and they're all good. They're all good if we work, if we do the work. Every faith tradition will have blessings to give us. Or maybe you want to move your thinking toward the unified theory of everything. That's a tall order. No one has done it yet. But I'm moving toward it. I can feel that I am moving toward it. Maybe you want to complete an academic degree or start another one. Remember that no goal in your life will be impractical. Everything that happens in your life has practical value. So some people might think that a goal of yours is frivolous or not important or unnecessary. Don't worry about that part of it, because every body of knowledge is connected to every other body of knowledge. So the purpose that you write down, or maybe it's going to be several, but this purpose should be a statement of what feeds the soul, what can feed us for a lifetime. So I'd like to give us a brief moment for contemplation. So this is going to be about 4 minutes or less. And I'd like for you to contemplate the questions. You may or may not want to close your eyes. That's important, to go inward. And maybe you'll do it with your face on the screen. So whatever that is, this will be about 4 minutes or less. Okay. You can take a couple of seconds now to bring ourselves back. And we always come out of contemplation or meditation gently so that we preserve the peacefulness, the introspection, the qualities of the inward journey. So then, I saved a few questions for after you write down your purpose of statement or your statement of purpose. So looking at our needs, what are they? You know, you could look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's an important list. I collect laundry lists, you know, the connection between Maslow's statements and the 10 Commandments and the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. So many great lists. Over 300 laws in Judaism. They can be important. They all work. The 5 Ks of the Sikh path, the 5 pillars of Islam, they all overlap. They all have common ground. And on top of our needs, what are our wants? Do wants overlap with needs? For some of us, yes. Are we dealing with any rigidity within ourselves or within others? How do these rigid things, these wants, these needs, how do they differ from age to age within our lives? The different ages we have lead to different enlightenments of different kinds. So from year to year, from season to season, are our needs and wants changing? Should they change? Are we allowing them to change? So now, after these supplemental questions, maybe you have a reason to change your statement, and that would be very, very natural. The tools we use today have many uses. Some tools may be used for building, and the same tools may be used for dismantling. We have to have a proper attitude in processing these ideas, because competition is going to increase in the world. There's only a finite amount of water and land area. The land area is not likely to expand. And the more people we have, the more competition there is going to be for land, for water, for good air. And that's going to be a necessary consideration with everything. So we want to have competition that leads to win-win on both sides, winning on both sides. Is it tough? Yes, you bet it's tough. You know, in my artistic life, I've really stopped competing. I don't think that a lot of competition is very important. And so very often I'll just try doing my best and not really worry about trying to displace the efforts of anyone else. I want to look for fun in everything I do, and I want to look for the benefits to myself, my family, and all of my friends. So, what are some of the tools? Some of the spiritual tools we have would be visualization, prayer, astral travel, for those of you who might be interested in some of the metaphysical activities that are available, astral travel. A body of knowledge. Some of you are computer whizzes. Some of you have technical knowledge that has not been mentioned before this. You know, regarding the psychic phenomena and the psychic tools we have, there's a book called Psychic Warrior. And it was written by a former Army Ranger who had a head injury while on active duty. And when he recovered from the injury, he professed to have psychic abilities. And he wrote his book, Psychic Warrior, describing the injury, describing his recuperation. And thereafter was developed a method of remote viewing. You can look this up. You can get a book describing how to develop the techniques of remote viewing. Now, the Soviets and Russians are way ahead of the West, so-called West, in their research. They have been using this for many years. But the idea being that two or more people gather in a space, they go down to a lower level of consciousness, going deep inside, and they all visualize going to a certain place. It could be the office of some public official. Okay, let's open this drawer. What do you see in the drawer? It could be any number of exercises like this. And then they all write down, after the exercise, they write down what they've seen. And then they glean the ideas that people wrote down that were common to each other. And this is shown to be a fairly reliable way of experimenting to uncover information. So if you have any background in intelligence in the military or in civilian life, wherever, this intelligence has one source, human intelligence. Humant, we call it in the Army, human intelligence. And it's a contribution. So we don't downplay anymore the benefits that can arise from developing these psychic abilities. So that book was Psychic Warrior. The tool of magic. The tool of magic is an important psychic tool. I don't mean the kind of magic that certain eccentric, offbeat people have used through history. I mean the idea to know, to will, to dare, to keep silence. A mixture of all of these can be found in different combinations in all of the spiritual paths. And those four statements, those four goals, are inherent in the practice of magic. To know, to will, to dare, and to keep silence. Keeping silence not only means the secrecy of what you're doing, but also the privacy of it. If we form a goal and we start talking about it with everyone, it can dissipate the energy that we want to use to achieve that goal. So we keep that private and we amplify within ourselves the vows working toward these goals. So also I will voice the differences between visualizing and hoping for the best. They're different. They're different. When we pray, are we asking for something? Are we asking for something deservedly? Have we gone inside and realized that we really have done as much as we can for ourselves before we ask? Is that happening? Or are we pleading? Are we begging for something? There's a difference there. Visualizing can be a cross between those. Visualizing means you go within yourself, maybe a modality of prayer, and you form a little movie in your mind about what you want. And you visualize, you make this little movie so vivid and so believable that you feel the positive emotions associated with achieving the goal. It would be something like what salespeople call assuming the sale. Assuming the sale. You know you're going to have it. You know that you're worthy. You know that you're making the appropriate sacrifices, and you can feel that it is here now. And that would be a healthy statement of what visualization can be for us. So, what are the tools of your trade? Let's now look at some physical tools that we all have. The physical tools. So maybe you have skills in carpentry, masonry, computers, culinary arts, automotive maintenance or repair of machines, mechanical things, skill in writing or in the visual arts. All of these skills, maybe you have a collection of all of these, and it's important to know your skills and to keep them alive. One thing I've coached my own two daughters about is once you acquire a skill, try to keep it going, try to maintain it in some way. One of my favorite things is doing calligraphy. I can do about 5 different hands. And I brought to the room this little box here. This box contains my tools of calligraphy. And I feel that I can take this box to anywhere in the world where there is a Roman alphabet, and I'll be able to supplement my income. I'll be able to do it because I've been maintaining some skills in calligraphy over the years. So they've meant something. I first picked this up with my cousins from Texas. They were very, very good artists, hardworking artists. I avoid using the term talented. I don't believe in talent as much as I believe in hard work. So they gave me an introduction to visual arts. Then later I went to a conservatory, the Mannes College of Music, and the secretary there, very nice gentleman, Mr. Krim, he taught me about calligraphy formally, and he looked at my work and he gave me pointers. I'll never be grateful enough for his showing me the way with the broad pen and the broad nib. So it's a skill. Maintain those skills. And, many years ago, also, I was drafted. Some of you know this already. And I knew a gentleman there. It was in flight school. I didn't finish flight school. I soloed a helicopter, but I didn't finish. I had migraines. But the point being, there was a gentleman in that, he was an E7 in Special Forces. He had been to Vietnam already. And he was a very devoted soldier. He described how when he was a boy, their father was a coal miner. And he was injured, and one winter all they had was their garden. They lived from the garden through that winter until he was able to recuperate sufficiently to go back to the mines. Well, he was a very inspirational guy, Homer Schumann. I'll never forget him. And he described how his library consisted of Army field manuals and technical manuals. And that was his library, and he believed in his skills, and the cultivation of these skills meant survival for his family. And so I'm mentioning him because I honor him after all these years. I met him in 1968. So he's still with me. Thanks, Homer. Well, some of these skills can be enlivened in your own needs and in your own background. And, in high school, I was a pretty mediocre student. I was more interested in being a gym teacher or a stunt man. So I didn't have the will to become skilled with some of the academics. But over the years, I became interested in in pyramids and pyramid energy. Some of you remember how in the mid-70s approximately, there was great interest in the pyramids, and how the then Yugoslavian government used pyramidal milk containers, and the milk did not need refrigeration when they shipped it in these pyramidal containers, and how they made a sharpener for razor blades. Then razor blades, you could take a razor blade, put it into this little pyramid, and the molecular structure on the edges of the razor blade would realign themselves and sharpening the blade. So these are fairly well-known and researchable benefits to the pyramid. Well, I wanted a meditation pyramid for my basement. Right behind this wall is a space, my spiritual space, my family's activity room. And in that space, I wanted to make a pyramid. This house is not oriented north, south, east, west. Nothing in Vienna is oriented that way. Everything is at an angle. So my big question was, how can I build a pyramid in that space as tall as possible, oriented north, south, east, west, so that I could sit in it cross-legged and meditate with the energy of this pyramid? Well, I took measurements, but what guided me was the practice of trigonometry. So after all of that, I revisited my high school trigonometry notes and made new ones. And so, with the help of certain charts I got from the internet and with my own arithmetic skills, I made notes on the dimensions that it would require, the heights and the angles of pyramids, so I could build it. Now, by the time I got all my calculations done, I found that I maybe lost interest in actually building the thing. But the big deal was that I did the calculations. So I repurposed the trigonometry from my high school education into something that was very practical and useful, at least to me, it was in the beginning. So I have my notes now. Another reason I didn't do it was that I couldn't find the corners. I couldn't find a satisfactory way of connecting at the corners and at the apex so that it wouldn't be a floppy structure. So all of these taken in hand into consideration, and these little templates I made, cardboard sides. One of these is the profile of the side of the pyramid leaning in toward the apex. And the other one is a profile with the sides away. What is the profile of the angles to the base? So, you have a shape called the tetrahedron. Tetra, 4. That is 4 triangles. A pyramid is not that. A pyramid has a square base and 4 triangles. That's what makes the pyramid different. And the pyramid has a center of energy. There's a focal point. It happens to be in the king's chamber of the Cheops pyramid. And in that king's chamber, there generates an energy that is calculable, that is measurable by electronic instruments. And when they try to X-ray the pyramid, that energy in the king's chamber seems to confound efforts to X-ray the pyramid. So that's a unique thing. And when you sit in meditation, your second chakra, Svadhisthana chakra, is the place that corresponds to the king's chamber. And that happens to be in your human body, the center where you can have useful energy. It's called chi or ki in the practice of Tai Chi. And it's also prana, or the seat of the Kundalini energy in the systems of yoga. So all these things connect with each other. You can't get away from these correspondences. And another thing, I'm going to show you here a book, another book. This house is full of books. This is Sacred Geometry. It's published by Toms and Hudson, or Thames, you might want to say. But this spiritual geometry is an extraordinary book. And it starts from the very beginnings of arithmetic and geometry. And those two subjects, by the way, were four subjects, you could say major subjects, in the Pythagorean school or Pythagorean school. Their four subjects were geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, and music and harmony. So those were the four main subjects. And in those days, it was a high secret thing to be schooled in those subjects. Now, of course, you know that you can get a book like this, and maybe some shelf space just this wide will give you all of the information you need for the rest of your life in order to have success and happiness. That last statement is just my interpretation. But with those four subjects, we can become enormously flexible in our lives. And this flexibility and diversity are accessible by every person. So with the compass and the straight edge, you can have it all, my friends, just a ruler and a simple compass. You can have all of the knowledge that the ancients had, in addition to a lot of other things. So let's move forward now. So here's a quotation from Louis Claude de Saint-Martin. Now, some of you may have heard of an order, a spiritual group called the Traditional Martinist Order. Now, the founder of this order, the Traditional Martinist Order, TMO, they had as their leader a man who was a Rosicrucian and a Roman Catholic. So combining those things, he gave us the Traditional Martinist Order. Now, de Saint-Martin said, to learn mathematics is good because it teaches measure in your head. And when it is in your head, it will also be in your entire being. Now, you could rephrase that in your own mind and come up with good reasons to continue to learn, which I know you already have in your minds. So now you have several lists. Maybe you have several lists of your skills, your intentions, your goals, your purposes. So compare the purposes you have listed with the tools you have amassed. And now look at the multiple purposes and the multiple tools. Can you cross-reference them? Can you cross-reference them? Now, some of you know one of my main disciplines is with music. I play a number of instruments. And currently I'm rehearsing with the Washington Balalaika Society. And they have Eastern European instruments, and they are tuned in Western scales, of course. And they're tuned very similar to the guitar over my left shoulder here. That guitar, the three bass strings, ascending, they are EAD. You don't need that. But those are the notes of the bass domra. So I've been learning the bass domra. It's tuned like the low strings of my guitar, but they read bass clef. That little squiggly thing on the beginning of the music, that determines what the names of the notes are on the staff. On those 5 lines, a little sign over here gives you what the names of the notes are going to be. So by reordering my brain slightly, I've picked up the bass domra and also prima domra, the tenor, the balalaikas, and it's an enormously enjoyable thing. I'm bending my mind to accommodate the new skills. So those skills are going to be across the board for you too. You have these skills. So cross-reference these things and see how the skills from one field can apply to other fields. I think I mentioned before that the MITRE Corporation locally here, maybe they're worldwide, I don't know. I didn't groove very well with the corporate world, I apologize. But to deeply respect them as as they deserve, I'll mention that as a human resources guy for veterans, I used to help vets get jobs. Well, the MITRE Corporation, among others, would only hire computer experts who could play a musical instrument. And the reason is they recognize that the skills with music, not only the dexterity things, but the ability to work with the arithmetic differences and similarities, that meant something in the areas of programming, coding, and the management of databases. So those musical skills have definite purposes. So if you're going to start an instrument, take me for a cup of coffee. I'll give you a free session. We can talk about what you want to do in your musical life. And don't worry about talent. I don't like that word. It's a cop out. You know who uses the word talent? People who don't want to practice. Afterwards, they say, oh, I didn't have the talent. No, excuse me. Did you practice? Well, duh, cough, stammer. Well, getting to the point here, there are many points. I guess you see that already. Artists in any field might have an easier time with reprocessing and reordering some priorities and using found materials to include found or lost fragments of knowledge, which are enormously important. One of those things was the study of machinery in my early life. My father and I had a print shop, and I learned how to study machines and see what the little parts were doing, all those wiggly levers and gadgets. My goodness, the goings on of those machinery people is just an amazing thing. So I learned how to take apart a letterpress and reassemble it in a new location, and the paper cutter also. And using some of that knowledge, I learned how to take skids. These are the platforms on which machinery is shipped or large quantities. And I would take these wooden platforms and I'd take them apart, and I made several sets of exercise equipment for myself over the years, just by recompositing and cutting and nailing and screwing and gluing. So the conclusion here I'm going to come to with all of us together is that if we can cross-reference items in these two columns of our goals and purposes with the skills we already have, we're going to come up with new ideas. And not only new ideas for changing a career or augmenting your current career, but also achieving some independence, which would be freedom from fear. That's a big one. Freedom from uncertainty. Freedom from conflict, especially inner conflict. That is where we sometimes are at risk, because the more we can conquer the inner conflict, the more harmony we're going to have, the more we can exude goodness for our friends and family, and for strangers too. Having that goal will come from a liberation from within us. So at this time, I will conclude my talk. I hope it has been useful to you, as useful as you think it can be. That's how useful it will be. So I'll invite Neil to rejoin the group with a suggestion.
Yeah, if everybody would like to unmute and maybe even share some of the questions, the answers to the questions that John posed. I mean, what is your purpose? What's most important use of your your time, your energy right now? What are your goals? I mean, there's a lot, obviously. What are your needs and your skills? Cross-referencing skills or your current tools with needs and goals and so forth. So there's a lot to unpack. But if somebody wants to share any of those items, it'd be nice. We'll keep the recording going for a few minutes. So who's willing to share? Frank?
Yeah, you were talking about needs and wants, and I think there's a difference. I think a lot of times people get confused. You know, a need is something that you need, I mean, is essential. So if you don't have that, you can't move to any wants. You can have all the wants you want, but you're dealing with your needs. You can't get any traction on your wants. I don't know if that makes any sense. I learned that from somebody years ago and stuck with me. Like, yeah, if you're having a need that's essential for you and you're not taking care of it, you can want anything you want, but you're never going to get it because you've got these underlying needs that you haven't taken care of.
Well,
That makes sense.
maybe another way of putting it also is what you want, you don't need necessarily.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, it's just saying the same thing, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm thinking probably like on another level of, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough food, you're worried, your energy is going that way. So any wants you have are not going to come to fruition if you can't satisfy those needs. And I think that's where a lot of people are now, you know?
I mean, I think of needs in terms of comfort, safety, health,
Maslow.
food,
Mhm.
shelter, basics, compassion, love.
Yeah.
So, somebody else? Leon, you unmuted.
Okay. Well, when I think of my purpose, unfortunately, my goals are often uh, limited by my abilities. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I love the concept of win-win, because that's part of my purpose, is to not only help myself, but help others, or at least not upset an apple cart here and there. But I've come to the conclusion that I'm satisfied with defining winning as making things better. So it's less ambitious. It's just leave every place you visit a little bit better. And so think better, better. And when you're describing your problems with the pyramid in your basement, well, when I was trying to put in an extra room in my basement, I kind of inadvertently made a pyramid, and Jody's dad had to come over and help fix that up. So we're not always going to win, but maybe we can get some help. Yeah,
That's right. He's always going at people's houses and, you know, like, those guys on those TV shows and that go in there and say, well, this guy tried to, renovate his kitchen and then they had to come in and fix it. Right.
exactly.
Right. Yeah. I go drive through Fairfax and I look at all the like extensions on houses and, new roofs on garages. And I just go by places and think that's all the places my dad donated his time,
Yeah.
around in Fairfax.
There's a whole street.
Well, that's what he did for money. That he built houses to sell. That's his last
What
name.
if you see something called Clemens Court?
Yeah.
His family helped build all the houses there
Yeah,
with Clemens family.
that's right. He's a carpenter. So, I was going to kind of same kind of thing, Leon. I'm thinking about my purpose and my goals. Thinking like my purpose should be what gives me, like you said, gives me energy, gives me, restores me spiritually. And so I feel like my purpose should just be like kindness and respect, like you were saying, Leon, just, not bringing negative or conflict into the world is my purpose. My goal is, and my needs are just for survival, pay my next bill, that sort of thing. That's my needs. But I think my goals and my wants are about the same, to be creative. I want to be creative. That's what gives me, it gives me peace. I mean, if we talk about self-care, it made me think self-care for me includes like order and peace and health, but not like, I think a lot of times when you see something or read an article about self-care, it's talking about going out and getting, changing your hairstyle to make you feel better, or getting your nails done or whatever for women. That's the kind of things. And I'm thinking more along the lines of just inner self-care as opposed to external self-care. But that's and you talked about the Maslow thing. And years ago, I did a workshop with someone, and we're doing it for marginalized people, or it could be generalized to any marginalized group, where we said society flips it upside down. Like the idea is to work your way up to the top for self-actualization, right? If you flip it upside down, it's almost like you need to be, if you're marginalized, you need to be, this person first, and then you can, we'll be there for you, for your food, your shelter, your, whatever, your comfort, your education, give you a job. But it's like we're requiring you to be that whole person first before you have your needs taken care of. And, I can't remember, it's been too many decades since we did that workshop, but I can't remember exactly how we worked it all out. But it seemed to make sense at the time. And thinking about that occasionally, that trying to make sure I don't do that to people, like saying, well, you're not worthy yet to have the things that everybody expects, in life. So anyway, you made me think of those things. And naturally, I already take notes. So I've got a bunch of things to to go back and put together.
And I am glad we have a recording so I can go back.
Yeah, Zach said, I'm listening to this recording later. But I do appreciate it. There was, and I was intrigued, and I have to think about a little bit that you said you didn't believe in talent, that you believe in hard work, not talent. And I have to process that a little bit, because I always said, oh, I'm not talented enough to do this, or I don't have the ability to do that. I'm not wired that way. I'm not, and perhaps I was limiting myself in not trying to do things that I considered. I remember way back in high school, failing typing. And I came out of typing class, because everybody had to take typing, right? And that's back before, you couldn't make mistakes because there was no way to correct it. You had to start over again. And so I said, well, I'll never be able to type. I'll never be able to get a job that can type. I'll never be able to use that keyboard the way they want you to use it. And now I'm very, very, very comfortable with the keyboard. Once it wasn't the high pressure, then, and it was just something at first. In fact, it was a creative thing, because I got a job with a man that wanted me to set up a computer, because he was a cartoonist.
A man, people
Might know him.
Yeah.
Oh, you want me to drop names? Okay. I worked for the Wizard of Id and cartoon strip, and I worked for Brant Parker, and who he's kind of a family member. But anyway, he thought if I had a computer, I could get all these different characters on the computer, and then because I don't know if you guys know this, so they wax their different parts together on a big sheet, and the cartoons are about this big when you send them in, and they do drawings, and then they have to be waxed on with a wax machine. And so I got a computer, got a Macintosh, because they told me that was the best kind to get, back in the, when would this be, like Zach, like 1980 or something, 81, 82. And because I was just given the free rein, get one, go through all my cartoon strips, make sheets of all the chickens, make sheets of all the, this character looking in different directions, do all that. And I was just on my own and allowed to be creative. And since then, I've just been very comfortable with computers, because I figured it out myself. Didn't feel like, oh, I have to get a grade on it or something. I don't know. But, something that I limited myself. And I think, have I done that with a lot of other things in my life? But anyway, that's more information than you needed.
I'm a little bit jealous with your computer skills, because I'm still not familiar with a keyboard.
Yeah, well, now I can just type away and be looking at something else, Before I had to ding, 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 ding. So now I'm not saying I'm a programmer or anything and I can figure out why something didn't work. I'm saying I can use the thing and I'm comfortable using it where before I was set aside. My mother did the same thing. She liked to send cards to people and she'd spend thousands of dollars a year going to the store, buying cards, buying stamps, and then writing inside very personal notes, scratching out words that were already written, to make it be personal. And my brother gave her a computer and said, you can make your own cards. And she sat there for hours upon hours until she became the card lady, and personalized, to what the person's situation was so that it meant something when they got it.
And now I'm trying to live up to that from the moment that she wasn't doing it. I've been trying to live up to it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know her pen name as Hallmark, do we?
No. She did one time use a Hallmark program though. But anyway, that's really a side point. But thank you. You
Thank
gave
you,
me
John.
a whole bunch of things that I've got written down here to think about.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. Jane, did you want to?
Yeah, I have a question, John. You mentioned, I've heard this before, and I would love an explanation of, and I think I got one of the words wrong. You said unified, is it field of everything? Unified something of everything.
Unified theory
Theory.
of everything.
Okay.
And that pertains to the ideas that the inward mathematics, the idea of going in toward the molecular and atomic physics, to use that mathematics is different from the mathematics we use to go outward into the bigger universe, calculating, I don't know, orbits and energies and galactic interaction. All of that big math is a different math from going inward. And so the big goal among physicists, the hot topic, is how to make those two systems of mathematics coincide, how to get them to interact with each other, which is also the huge spiritual goal. How can I better myself to groove better with the macro universe, macrocosm? So yeah, thanks for asking. That's great.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop the recording now because we're getting deeper and deeper into areas that require us to get deeper and deeper into. So for the sake of recordings and other people who have not been with us this morning, let's